Alright, this is going to be part 2 on how to do the brakes on this Honda Accord 2004 EX. I already did the front brakes, now we're going to do the rear brakes. I'm doing this because of severe brake pulsation. So if you don't know how to jack this vehicle up from the rear and where to safely support it, I'll go ahead and show you right now. Alright, from the back of the vehicle, we're going to come up under here. See this tow hook right here? We're going to put the jack right there and lift it up. Now you're going to have a pretty big jack if you're going to do the same thing to get it up high enough. Alright, from the side of the vehicle where we're going to put our jack stands is right up under here. If you can see it, right there. That's where we're going to jack it up over there, and we're going to put the jack stand on each side right here. And I've also chalked the front wheels. And we're going to release the emergency brake so we can do our rear brakes. And using a 19mm on an impact, I'm going to take these lug nuts off. Alright, I've been flushing the brake fluid at each one of the brakes. If you watch part 1, I'll show you what the sequence is. So this is the last one over here. What is this one? The left rear. And so we'll go ahead and I'll show you how to bleed them. Same procedure for flushing, the way I do it. So you pull the cap off right here, expose the bleeder valve there, and then what I like to do, I take a 6-point socket and put it over there, and just being very gentle, pop it loose. That's why I use a little bit longer ratchet. These things can be on there pretty tight. Just be careful, you live in the Rust Belt, you can break those. And then it's a 10mm, by the way. And then what I do on these rear ones, I use an offset wrench. And that way I can just loosen it and tighten it. No problem. And then I'll take my little brake bleeding bottle and I'll attach the hose. Just like that. And I'll go ahead and I'll have an assistant pump up the brakes and hold them, and then I'll open it up and we'll get all this old nasty fluid that's in here out of there. Okay, pump it and hold. You can see that nasty fluid coming out. Okay, pump it up and hold it. And pump it up and hold it. And pump it up. And I'll do this several more times until I'm satisfied that the fluid is nice and clean. And I'll also keep an eye on the master cylinder and make sure we don't bring it down too low and start sucking air into it. Okay, now that I'm satisfied the fluid's nice and clean, we'll go ahead and put our cap back on. We'll go ahead and get this caliper off. Get this old rotor off and be good to go. Alright, let's get these rotor screws out while we're thinking of it. Now I'm going to use my impact. We're going to take this 12mm bolt or fastener off and this 12mm one. I'm going to take them both off. I'm going to use my impact with a swivel. This is definitely where a swivel comes in handy. Now we should be able to lift it off. We'll just set it right there so it's not hanging on the brake hose. These inside pads were very close to being on the wear indicator. These things were definitely ready to be replaced. The outside pads were a little bit better. So these might have been not sliding. Yeah, that one's not quite sliding as good as it should be. That one. Alright, now next we'll take this bracket off. If we go right in here, we're going to take this bolt off right here. And then where's the other one? The other one's right here. We're going to take that one off. I'm going to use my impact once again with a swivel. This is a 14mm. Alright, get this rotor off. I suspect these are the original rotors. A little bit of a lip on there, right there, so I'm okay with changing them out. Alright, now that we got everything apart, let's go ahead and get it cleaned up, get it put back together. One of the most important things you can do, this is not too rusty, but if there's a bunch of rust, you want to make sure to clean this hub face off. That can put your rotor on there cocked just a little bit, or if there's rust in there, it can continue to grow and move your rotor off. And just that little bit being off will definitely cause pulsation in your brakes. Now, for the most part, most of your pulsation is going to come from the front brakes, but it's not unheard of to get it from your rear. So while we got it apart, might as well clean it up properly. Alright, I'll go ahead and use this, clean around the studs there. Going to put a little fluid film on here to keep it from rusting up. Just a little bit. Alright, we'll go ahead and clean this up. I'll clean on top of these anti-rattle clips and below it. You can see these rattle clips are in good shape, so I'll be reusing them. If they're in bad shape, I'd replace them. I'm being careful not to damage the boot. You want these surfaces cleaned up because the more buildup, the less tolerance you have and the more chance you have of your pads not sliding properly. Alright, before I clean my gloves off or change them out to lube that up, let's get this piston pushed back in. Alright, you're going to need a kit like this that can push these back in and twist at the same time, because this has the parking brake assembly attached to that caliper. So the only way you can do it is by pushing and twisting at the same time. So those little notches right there will push that piston back in and twist it. It's necessary for the emergency brake operation. And I found that this attachment M, I'll show you the kit here in a minute, that works best for this. So all we need to do is get these two little dots aligned with that and get this plate in there. You twist this, brings this plate back so then it's tight. Well, wasn't tight enough. Sometimes you can do it with this clip in the way right here. Sometimes you can't. Just stick my screwdriver in there, pry it out. And the key is you have to twist, you have to turn this backwards so that it puts pressure backwards against it, so that when you turn this, it goes forward. So yeah, you have to turn this a little bit, turn this back, turn this, turn this. You want it, on this you got to get it down pretty flush. And you can see, can you see where that is right there? That is off. It's not correct right there. And there you go. That's perfect. That's where it should be, right there. Because that piece back there, I don't know if you can see that, makes contact with this little nub right there. So if it doesn't make contact with that, you're going to have a soft, spongy brake feel. So that's why you got to make sure that plus is perfectly in line with that. Alright, while we're here, this face is nice and clean. We'll just clean off these contacts. Just use a little wire brush. This one's seen better days. There, that's good. And then this little retention spring, just make sure the contacts are clean right here. This little edge right there, just where it contacts the pads, keeps pressure on them. Helps keep noise and stuff down. Now this can be a kind of a pain to get back in. Let's see if I can get you a shot. Goes like that on the inside. So I usually just push it through over on this side as far as I can. And just pull it through just like that. I just hook it from up. I hook it from the top corner right here. I don't hook it from that. I hook it from the little gap right there. Hope you could see that. Hope my head wasn't in the way. Alright, there's the new pads for this side. Just remember, one is going to have the wear indicator, and then the other one won't. The wear indicator on the back brakes, it's going to go on the inside, and it's going to go on the bottom. So it's going to go like that on the brakes we're working on right now. Be on the bottom, because that's going to be the leading edge where the rotor hits it first. It's going to be right there. So on the front wheels, you want the brakes are situated the other way, and so you want it on top. But on the back brakes, you want it situated on the bottom. And these Akebono, they do come with some brake lube, which we can use if we wanted to, but I have my own. And then here's the rotor. It does look like it has a little bit of oil on there, so I'll clean it off with some brake clean, and then we'll get it put on. Alright, with some clean gloves, we'll put this back on. We just got to make sure to line up the screw holes. And with just a tiny amount of anti-seize, put these back in. Whoever takes them off next time will thank us. Sometimes these don't like to go all the way on. You'll think they're all the way on. Make sure you get it all the way back on there. Alright, I like to put brake grease on both sides of these rattle clips. Just a thin little layer, I don't put too much. Alright, now we'll service the slide pins. Just pull them out, clean them off. Put some silicone paste on there, not too much. Silicone paste is what Honda recommends on slide pins. And just make sure they're in a neutral position. Like that one feels pretty good. If this one, like this one, if there's a little too much, you can just burp it, take a little bit out like that. There, that feels better. You don't want, that one needs a little bit. There, that feels much better. We don't want them putting too much pressure on the caliper. Alright, I'm just going to slip this back over, put my two bolts back in. Get them started by hand, then we can tack them down. Alright, we'll go ahead and torque those bolts down to 41 foot-pounds. You're going to need a deep socket. There we go. Alright, so there's your inside pad with the wear indicator. Goes on the inside just like that. Now Honda recommends you take these pads and you put brake grease in between the pad and the shim and on the back of the shim. So that's what we're going to do. Just a thin little coat. And we'll put a little bit right on the ears. That's what Honda recommends also. Just a little bit. Get too much like that, you can wipe it off. Alright, we'll just set them into place. just like that. I'll take this one, set it into place just like that. Be sure not to touch the friction material. Be sure the pads are facing inside to the rotor. And if you get anything on the pads or the rotors, make sure to clean it off. Okay, if we did everything right, we should be able to just take this caliper and carefully put it right back over. You might have to push these slide pins in just a little bit so it slides over it. If it won't fit, that means you might not have pressed the piston back in far enough. You got to press this caliper down a little bit to get that bolt in, because those springs, that spring that we pulled out and put back in wants to push it back out. Alright, let's get those tightened up. Alright, with a 17 millimeter socket and ratchet. And if you notice, the bolt is turning. So we'll need to hold it with a 17 millimeter wrench. And it's 17 foot-pounds. Click, right there was 17. Same thing down here. You're going to have to hold the inside bolt, caliper pin. Click. 17. Alright, now double check your work. Make sure your rotor's tight. Make sure your two caliper slide pin bolts are tight. Make sure your two caliper mounting bracket bolts are tight. That should be it. We didn't take anything else off. So everything looks good to go. And obviously make sure your pads are on the right side. So those are the things I look for when I do a job. Take a second, look over real quick before you button it up. Alright, we'll torque the lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. Alright, we'll do the same as the front brakes. We'll pump them up. Make sure we have a good brake pedal feel. And then I like to activate the emergency brake a few times. Alright. Pull the chocks from our wheels. Alright, now that we got the vehicle back level and the wheels torqued down, we're going to put some Honda .3 brake fluid. We're going to top it off just like we started the day with. We're just going to bring it up to the full mark, or the max I should say. Right there. And just FYI, if you don't add brake fluid in between your brake pad changes, you won't ever overflow your master cylinder when you push the calipers back in. Usually the only time they overflow is when somebody topped them off in between brake pad jobs. We'll put our strainer back in. Put our cap back on. And if this wasn't all clean, I would clean it up, but it's nice and clean. Alright, now that we got everything buttoned back up and everything's ready to go, probably the most important thing you can do after a new brake job is you need to bed those pads, the new pads, to the rotors. And in this case, all 4 tires or axles are new. So we got to bed all 4 of those to the new rotors. Otherwise, you don't bed them in and you just run out, make one hard stop. Well, those pads are going to stay, and that resins will release right to that one spot. And then every time your rotor runs past that one spot, a little more pad will rub on it. Next thing you know, you're going to have a high spot, which is also known as disc thickness variation, and you're going to have vibrations again. So in general, the bed-in process that I do a series of 5 stops from about 35 miles per hour down to about 10 miles per hour or so, and then I go about 30 miles per hour down to about 5 miles per hour, and I do 5 of those. So 5 of each, 5 and 5. And I don't come to a stop. I go to an area where I can just keep driving, because what you don't want to do for those first 10 or 15 stops, you don't want to come to a complete stop and let those pads burn into one area on your rotor. You want them to bed in on the entire rotor. So that's why 35 down to 10, and then I release the brakes and keep running, keep moving. Then 35 down to 10, and I do that moderately, and then the 30 to 5 I do a little bit more aggressive, but not too bad, and do the same thing down, and then I release it and just always keep driving. That way those rotors or those pads never stick to one spot. And then I will drive for like 5 or 10 minutes in an area where I don't stop at all. I just keep driving without hitting the brakes and let those pads cool back down. And then that will allow them to bed in properly, at least initially. Still takes a good 100-150 miles to really break in thoroughly, but that's a good start, and that's a good way to avoid having brake pedal pulsations. And there you go. That's my secret on how I cure these Hondas of brake pedal pulsations, otherwise known as brake rotor warpage. Everything I did, that's how I do it, and that's how I get rid of brake pedal pulsation. So hey, now you know what I know. So hey, if this video helps you out, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. This is where all the fun is afterwards, at the end of the day. Cleaning up your tools and putting them away. So much fun. Alright, as a little bonus, I'll show you some of the tools I used. But first, coffee. Alright, one of the tools I used on the rear brakes was this tool from Betool. You can see model number right there. BETHW0037. You can see it comes with all the attachments to do the rear calipers on these Hondas that have the emergency brake as part of the caliper. And from what I've seen, this tool is made in Taiwan, and Harbor Freight has a version. A bunch of other companies have a different version, but they all look similar. They'll all look just like this, and from what I've researched, it's the same exact tool manufacturer in Taiwan making these. So if you get one kit, you get them all. But I do know that there's some that are 18 piece and there's some that are 21 piece. So obviously, if it's going to be about the same price, get the 21 piece. Make sure you got the whole set. In any event, you need a tool like this to do those rear brakes. Obviously, I used my Milwaukee 3/8 inch impact. This is the fuel version, brushless. I love this thing. I use it all the time. You don't need that. It just makes jobs like this easier. In order to take all the rust off and stuff, I used angle die grinders. I don't have two, or I use die grinders. This one's straight, this one's angled. I don't have two angles. I broke the other one. So that's why I just use a straight one. And the only reason I use two is so I don't have to change the attachments. And these are just a coarse 3M type roll lock disc system that takes the rust off. And you can see this one that goes over the studs. This is made by 3M, and I believe OTC makes one also. This is OTC actually. And so you can just unscrew this and put a new head on there. But it's nice to go over the top. And then this one is the same thing, it just doesn't have the hole in there. And it's also similar where you can just unscrew them. You can put different attachments on there like this one. I believe I got this kit from Harbor Freight for cheap. So I would recommend just go get this from Harbor Freight. It works good. And you can, the kit I got came with the big ones like this. So you can put different attachments on there and they just screw in and lock on there. And then obviously it has the small ones too. Works really well. So I definitely recommend that. And then this caliper tool, or piston tool for the calipers. This is from, who makes this? Lyle. I'll try to get a part number when I can and put it in the description. But yeah, this definitely makes it nice. You know, it's not necessary. You can use a C-clamp to push it back, but I definitely like that. And then one of my favorite tools from Plus, this 55-001 little pump that I use to remove fluids, and works great for brake fluid. And obviously you need an assortment of wrenches and ratchets, sockets. You know, if you're going to work on your vehicle, you got to have at least a basic selection of hand tools like that to do things, and a screwdriver. But yeah, that's some of the highlights of some of the main tools that I use. So hey, don't forget, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.